Welcome to another episode of the Productivity Show. I'm here with Brooks. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. How are you, Tan? How's your week going?
Pretty good. I between our meetings today, as you know, we ended our ops meeting a little bit earlier, and I went to the sauna right away. So I got a little sweat in. Went to the cold tubs. I didn't do the compression socks that you've experienced here because I didn't have any time because I had to come home right away to do this podcast. So now we're here.
Yeah, for those who don't know, we have a meeting day here at AE, and we've recently moved the podcast recording days to our meeting days. So Tan and I basically spend the entire day looking at each other on Zoom. So this is another hour, another 35 minutes to an hour of Brooks and Tan.
Yeah, but I don't think people came here for the bromance. I think people came here because they want to know some of our favorite purchases over the last 12 months. So let's just dive into that. And before we do, we always like to share some of our favorite productivity resources as of lately. So there are three of them here. So the first one is called Rear and this is a plastic mold where you kind of like relax your neck. So I just recently purchased this in the last 2 weeks or so, and I've been using it every day, where you just lay down on the floor and you put your neck on this little plastic mold, and it will just kind of like curve your neck. And you just lay there for 10 minutes, and it completely releases all sorts of tension in your neck and in your shoulders. And if you're somebody like me who sits a lot and has a lot of tension held in their shoulders and neck, this is a great little tool that I've discovered. And I use it every day now to meditate and then also just relax and kind of get away from my desk. So rear end. The second one is another kind of like plastic mold that I discovered. It's called a Psorite. It's spelled Psorite. So what this does is it actually loosens the psoas muscle, which is kind of like a really big muscle by your abs that is also connected to your back. And a lot of times if you have like tightness around your hips, your abs, and your lower back, oftentimes it's related to the psoas muscles. And so a lot of fighters, MMA fighters, use this to kind of loosen up that muscle because it's a very difficult muscle to loosen up once it gets really tight. So if you do a lot of sitting, oftentimes that muscle gets really tight. So you have all these different stretches that you could do, but with the Psorite, which is a plastic mold, you can actually get it done faster. And then also the third one here is Elements. It's actually spelled LMNT, so 4 letters there. And it's an electrolyte powder. I'm a big fan of electrolyte powders. It's a great way to hydrate, get some extra minerals in. And they taste great. And the beautiful thing about this one is that it actually tastes like a Gatorade back in the 90s without all the crazy sugars. So if you love that flavor, Element is one of my favorite electrolyte powders. So go check that out as well. So Brooks, we're going to be talking about all sorts of different purchases we've made, and we're going to have links to all of them in the show notes, including the top 3 resources we just mentioned. So whether you're a Windows user, Mac user, iPhone user, Android user, there's something in it for you here. And whether you want something for free or you have a limited budget, we've got something for you here today as well. So Brooks, how did we come up with this episode today? Because I know we do this usually once a year, but what inspired you to do it this time?
Yeah, so we have done a number of our favorite purchase episodes, like you said, over the years, and I'll link to a few of those in the show notes. However, recently I saw a thread on Reddit talking about the podcast. So hello, Reddit. I guess we have some listeners over there. And I happened to come across that. And one of the commenters was saying that these type of episodes, learning about resources is one of their favorite things on the podcast. So it kind of inspired us to bring it back. But we wanted to change it up this time. Usually, sometimes in past episodes, we've talked about some of the tools we've talked about on the lot quite a bit over the years, like noise canceling headphones, gunner glasses, Philip Hue lights, Sonos, that sort of thing. This time we thought we'd change it up and make a semi-hard limit where we're only going to talk about things that we have purchased or enjoyed over the last year, because we want to get as many new things as possible. So yeah, that's the parameters. Could be an app, a book, a gadget, a physical tool, a course, anything really that we've come across in the last year. So yeah, Tan, are you ready to share your number one tip?
Yeah, let's dive in right away. We have 10 of them, and I'm going to have five. You're going to have five. So, my first one, this is probably the purchase of the pandemic, the best purchase I've made during this whole quarantine. And that there's actually two things. So, I'm going to group them in one. And that is a kettlebell and a mace bar. So a lot of you are probably familiar with what a kettlebell is, right? So it's basically this free weight that you can use to do all sorts of exercises. And currently, as we're recording, they're sold out everywhere, and shipping is delayed for like weeks and months. And one of the best things you can do, I've discovered, is actually buy them secondhand on the used market. So you can go to places like Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, even eBay. You can find some really good prices there. But if you try to buy them new, they're pretty much sold out. And I've been wanting to have a kettlebell for a long this time because I always told myself, oh, it would be nice to do some squats at home or do some swings at home or do like an overhead press at home between breaks to kind of like keep myself in shape a little bit. But, it was always this fantasy of like, yes, this sounds great in theory and I would love to do it. Right. But I actually never did it. And it wasn't until the quarantine started and we couldn't work out at our gyms that it kind of forced me to make this purchase. And now that I have it, I absolutely love it. And I use it every day. And I'm not kidding when I say that I use it every day. I do use it every day. And then the other thing is the mace bar. So the mace bar, if you're not familiar with what this is, I've never seen one until recently when I started working with it. It was recommended by my personal trainer. His name is Bert. We've been using it a few times, and once the quarantine started, he recommended that I got one. And think of it as like a sword with a free weight at the end, and that's your mace bar. And so it's a great tool for your upper body, for your shoulders. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Makes the workout very different as well. You can improve your grip strength. So it's such a really versatile tool that you can use. And both are really versatile, the kettlebell and the mace bar. And so if you want to switch it up from just like your dumbbells or your body weight workouts, I highly recommend you check out the kettlebell and the mace bar. And if you want to kind of get an idea of like weights to start with, as far as like the kettlebell goes, I would say start with maybe if you're a male, start with like 30 pounds. I think that's a great starting weight. And if you're a female, maybe 15, 18 pounds. For the mace bar, I would recommend for most people just to start off with 10 pounds like I did, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, the kettlebell I was familiar with before, but I have to admit I had never heard of a mace bar at all. And this is something Kim H. We record these episodes live in front of our dojo productivity community, and she said that too. That she's never heard of a mace bar before. So this is definitely a cool pick that I think we'll have links to everything in the show notes, theproductivityshow.com/303. So we also, for our dojo, we record these on video and we put them on YouTube as well. And so Kim has asked Tan to demo it, and I did not think he would, but he is on screen right now holding his mace bar.
Yes, this is a mace bar. So I just grabbed it real quick. So as you can tell, this is the weight here. For everyone that's listening, you can't see it, but for those who are live, you can see it. This is what that looks like. So it's kind of like a sword. It's kind of like a heavy sword. And again, it requires surprisingly a lot of strength and balance to use this. So you work a lot of these like stabilizer muscles that you normally don't really get from regular workouts. So I love this tool. So that's my number one that I recommend right now.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go in a completely different direction for my number one pick. And that is going to be surprising possibly for some people, and that is a Surface Pro 7. So my first pick is definitely my most expensive pick. And if you are on we are possibly heading into a recession. So if you're on a spending freeze, we totally understand. For me, we have a reputation here at AE, somewhat deserved, of being more on the Apple side of things. However, we do definitely recommend, try to balance everything out. And whenever we're sharing Mac resources, we try to share Windows resources, iOS, Android, etc. And so I've always been a Windows user. I'm mainly a Mac user, but I've always been a Windows user. And I used to buy these really cheap laptops that would work for a while and then just be kind of a bad experience to use. Or I'd use VirtualBox on my Mac, which does work pretty well, but it takes up a lot of space and it kind of slows things down a little bit. So I decided I'm going to spend a bit more money than normal, and I bought a Surface Pro tablet. So it's sold by Microsoft, and it's been a really great experience for using Windows. You see them all the time in airports and stuff like that. So now when I want to fire up Outlook to do some things, when I want to do some screen captures or record some video on Windows, I just have it on the bookshelf behind me. I just reach back, grab it, open it up, and it instantly starts up. So it's not like my old Windows computer that you'd start it up and it would take forever to load. Yeah, and I've been really, really enjoying it. So if you are somebody who wants to go a bit more portable, if you're a Windows user and wants to go a bit more portable, definitely check that out. If you're a Mac user, but you want to kind of dip your toe in the Windows world, and you don't mind, of course, spending a little bit more of money. I think they start at $749. Definitely recommend a Surface Pro. The one thing I would say though is it doesn't come with like the iPad, it doesn't come with a keyboard, so that's an additional purchase. And I definitely recommend that keyboard, and it works really well with the kickstand at the back, and it just opens up and you have a good keyboard with a trackpad. So I'm surprisingly impressed. Chris O in the dojo asks, what's the difference between an iPad and a Surface Pro? One of the main differences is that the Surface Pro runs regular Windows. It's not some tablet OS like Microsoft has tried in the past. It runs straight up Windows 10. So you're able to do all the things that you would normally be able to do in Windows, use the same software, use the same interface, but it's in a tablet form factor. Yeah, Janira says the early Surfaces were terrible, and that's one reason why I never bought them. But yeah, I've been pleased with this Surface Pro 7. I think they really have improved them.
Nice. I've played around with them quite a bit, and I honestly really like them too, because they're so portable and they're high quality as well. So if I were to get another Microsoft or Windows device, this is something I would purchase myself too. So maybe if I get a bonus this year, maybe that's something I'll buy for myself then. Cool. So you got the Surface Pro. My second item here for today, or the third recommendation that we have here on the podcast, that is the AirPods Pro. So this is the thing by Apple. And speaking of Apple, most of my purchases are Apple as well. But also, as everyone knows at Asian Efficiency, we like to recommend Windows tools and apps and such as well. But I wish Microsoft created earbuds too, because I think that's something that they could probably benefit from too. Because I think they're such an essential tool to have, like having earbuds or headsets, especially as we're all working from home now, right? And so there's a lot of options we have there. On the high end, we have the Bose QC35s, which we are still big fans of and definitely recommend. And so I was really hesitant to purchase the AirPods Pro because of the noise canceling features, right? And it's supposedly be amazing, and Bose kind of like has a stronghold in that particular area. But my track record is to have the version 1 of the AirPods, version 2, and then now the AirPods Pro. So I was really curious. And having it for a few months now, I bought them as soon as they came out. I am happy to say that they're really good, and I really like them. And so I do want to recommend them to everyone. As far as like travel goes, I would say the Bose QC35 is still superior. But as far as like a daily driver, I think the AirPods Pro is better suited. So on a daily basis, I actually prefer to use the AirPods Pro. So whenever I'm leaving my home, I always have them with me. Also, when I'm just walking around the house and just like want to listen to a podcast or an audiobook, instead of using like a Sonos or an Echo or something like that, I actually prefer to use my AirPods. And so that's where the AirPods Pro come in. And I'm happy to say that they also work after you drop them in a bathtub, or in my case, a cold tub. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, I go to this place in Austin called Generator Athlete Lab, and they have these cold tubs, or the equivalent of that is like an ice bath. And so I was sitting in there, and I could feel them like moving a little bit because I was shaking my head a lot from all the shivering. And then they just popped out and they fell in the water, and I thought, oh no, they're ruined because they were turned on, right? And so I walked home, put them in in this like little plastic bag with like those little silicone little bags in there, and just prayed for the best that they would work the next day, and they did. So I'm still using them today. Didn't lose any functionality. So if you drop them in water, I think you'll be okay. And I had them for a minute or something too. So that was a long time. So if you want to consider the AirPods Pro, I would say yes, definitely as a daily driver. For travel, I think the Bose QC35s are still superior, but they're also great for calls. I use them for calls all the time. If you need something to upgrade from in terms of the version 1 or version 2, I think it's a worthwhile upgrade.
Yeah, I have the AirPods, but V2, but not the Pro. I almost bought them, but then they were sold out, and kind of just haven't gotten back to looking into it. So yeah, that's something that I would like to upgrade to at some point, because I've heard I haven't heard any negative things about the AirPods Pro. Also, before we get a million social media comments and emails, actually, Microsoft did just, I think it's just a couple of weeks ago, released the Surface earbuds. So it is something they've just released. So that might be, when the AirPods first came out, everyone said they look funny, and they do kind of. The Surface earbuds kind of look funny too, except they don't hang down like the AirPods do. They're big circles in your ear. So I guess it just depends what you want. So I haven't heard anything about Surface earbuds one way or the other, but they do exist now apparently. And I agree, having these type of really easy, always on earbuds are fantastic. All right, so that is your number 2 to pick. So I will do my number 2 pick, and I am going to go for a book. So from a $750 tablet to a $15 book, and it's called Get Together by the authors from a company called People and Company. So Get Together is a book about building communities, and it's put out by Stripe Press. So Stripe, like the credit card processor, a lot of people don't know they actually have a book publishing wing as well, and it's usually around technology topics, computer history topics, or kind of business society topics. So they published this one, and the books that Stripe Press publishes are physically beautiful. So you can definitely get the Kindle version, but if you are into paper books, I would recommend getting the hardcover, because it is a really nice book. And usually when you read books about building communities, it's very metrics focused on stuff like reducing churn and getting people to stay longer, which is all very important stuff if you run a community. But this book takes an opposite approach, which is focusing on building, like, what does it mean to actually build a real community, and how can you build it so that people want to be a part of it, not necessarily want to stay, but want to be a part of it, and so that the community outlasts you. So if you're involved in any type of community, we're mostly here at AE focused on our community, the dojo, which we love. But the examples in the book do have lots of business examples, but also have examples like New York City running clubs and women's basketball leagues and karaoke sing-alongs. All these great examples of building community. It's a book I enjoyed way more than I expected to. So yeah, it's called Get Together, and it's linked to in the show notes.
I remember 2 weeks ago, you did a live training internally for everyone to kind of show what you learned from the book. And I thought, wow, that's such an amazing book that I purchased my own copy right after. So I started reading it a little bit last week, and learning a lot so far. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, my wife read it too, and now she wants to start a vegan cooking club. So it's very inspirational too.
All right, so we're going to move on here to our 5th recommendation today, and that is my 3rd one here. And that is a free app. This is an app I've been using for a while now, and it's called Dailyo. And what this app does, it allows you to track your mood every single day. And every day it will give you a notification or a prompt to remind you to put in your notes. And then you can kind of like click different icons that you can customize and say, oh, did I exercise today? Yes. Let's tap that icon. Did I eat at a restaurant today? Yes, I did. Okay, let's tap that icon. Did I eat healthy today? No. Okay, then let's not tap that icon then, right? So you can tap all these different icons of things you've done that day, And then it will at the end say, hey, how would you rate this overall? Like, you feel rad, which is amazing. You feel good, which is kind of like a positive thing. You feel like meh, which is kind of like a yellow color. You feel like, oh, it's all right. Or you feel, bad or terrible, right? And I started to implement this because I was talking to my sports psychologist about this, and we were talking about happiness, and we're just on the topic of like, what do we need to do to be happy and stay happy and consistently, feel that way? And one of the things she suggested was, Tan, what if you tracked your mood every single day for, a few months and see what happens? And maybe you'll start to notice like a pattern of things that you do consistently that will make you really happy and make you feel good, and some things that don't make you feel so good. And so I've been using it for about 2.5 months now, almost 3 months. And if I had to simplify my own results so far, sleep is like a big factor. If I sleep really well, then everything else usually just like is amplified. Then my typical day is pretty good. I feel pretty good and so on. But if I have a terrible night of sleep, then I oftentimes don't feel that great. So that's a big one, and a really easy one as well. But even on the poor nights that I had, there's still days where I felt pretty good. And I started to notice like, what were those things that I did on those particular days? And one of the common things was, if I had a bad night of sleep, if I did spend some time with friends, then oftentimes I felt pretty good about my day. And so everyone is obviously going to be different. And, and for me, I just know that, okay, as long as I continue to track this, then I will start to notice a pattern. And if I do have a bad night of sleep, I know that if I want to turn my mood around or feel good about myself that day, then I should probably spend some time with friends that day, right? Maybe work less or adjust my schedule and so on. So it's still kind of like in early stages. So I don't want to make any recommendations in terms of what to track and how to do it. But the app that I'm using right now for that is called Dailyo.
That's a cool example, because there's a lot of people use their journal for this. I do too. Like, you write down, oh, how are you feeling today, et cetera, et cetera. And that is super, super valuable. But there's just something next level about having it in an app that you can just see visually right away what the situation is, versus waiting until you go back and review your journal, and maybe you'll see the patterns, maybe you won't. But if you have an app like that, you'll definitely see it. And yeah, so it's great to share a free resource as well. And I looked it up. So Dailyo is available iOS and Android. So either platform, you can check it out. All right, so I will do my number 3 pick. So my number 3 pick is a SSD hard drive, an external SSD hard drive. So one I like is called the Samsung T5, and it's a small, I don't know how big it is, maybe 2.5 inches tall, maybe 2 inches wide, something if that. Very, very small. And I've started over time changing my external drives. I'm known as somebody who's kind of psycho about doing backups, and I have local file storage and stuff like that. I'm all about the cloud as well, but I like having local copies of my information when possible. And so I've started over time switching out my old spinning disk hard drives for SSDs. SSD stands for solid state drive. They're faster, they're quieter, there's no moving parts. And I like the T5 because it's incredibly small. You just plug it in and go. It is a bit pricey. Like the 1 terabyte version is, I think, about $170. If you want, you can build your own, which is what I've done for another drive. I wanted to save a bit of money, so I bought a Western Digital WD Blue 3D, which is not made to be an external drive. It's actually an internal drive, but you can buy these cheap enclosures, which is just a little box to put it in, and then you plug that into your computer. So I have both, and we have links to all of that in the show notes. But it's been really great. I use it for my backup drives. I use it for local file storage. I hope the mic isn't picking this up, but one of my external spinning disk hard drives is in the process of dying, so it's making weird noises throughout the day. So I have some prize money from an internal competition we have every month coming to me from AE in the form of a gift certificate. When that comes through, I'm going to be using that to buy a new SSD to replace this one that's singing death songs to me. So if you are looking for external storage and you can swing it, I'm a big fan of SSDs.
And here I am thinking all along when we have these little internal competitions and gift certificates that we give away to people at AE. They use them for your kids or for something noble, but no, you use them for SSD drives for yourself.
My kids get too much. They're not getting my prize money. No way.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well,
I gave them
for
life.
those who that's true, you did do that. And for those who don't know, one of the things we do internally, we use this service called Bonusly. And what you can do is give each other bonusly points, as they call them. So if someone did something really cool or something nice for you, you can like type in Slack and say, give Brooks 10 points or something. Everyone gets 100 points every single month that they can distribute. And then at the end of the month, whoever has the most points then gets a gift certificate. And so if you do exemplary work or you're just a great teammate, people oftentimes reward you for that, right? And so every month we have a little contest there, and Brooks every now and then wins. I mean, I'm technically eligible, but I never win because I'm always the one giving out, and I do get a lot of praise, but my praise is oftentimes verbal, not in bonusly points. So for anyone on the team that's listening, I love you all, and I will also accept bonusly points as well. It would be nice every now and then to win too. But
Noted.
oftentimes Brooks wins as well, including some other ladies on the team who win very often. So that is the end of my request there. Subtle request.
we know who will be winning next time.
That's right. All right, let's move on to the seventh item here and my fourth recommendation. And that this is honestly, if I had to strip down everything and just put it down to one purchase, this is probably the number one purchase I'm most happy about. If you've been listening to the Productivity Show for a while, you've heard me talk about this quite often. And that is the Aura Ring. So the Aura Ring is a fitness tracker. Think of it as a Apple Watch in a way that can track your heartbeat, your heart rate, how many steps you took that day, heart rate variability. It can track your sleep. It can track all these cool different metrics, but in the form of a ring. So when you wear it, oftentimes because it's so slim, people would never think that it is a fitness tracker, but it is. And so it's about $300. I have the silver one, and when you make that purchase, they'll ship you for free a sizing kit, so you know exactly what size you need to get. And then once you submit it, then they will actually ship you the right order. And so I highly recommend it. I've been using it for about a year now, and I use it every day. As soon as I wake up, I check my scores. I check how well I slept. I check my readiness score, which kind of gives you an idea of like how much energy you have going on or how well you recovered. I also look at my heart rate variability, if it's going up or not, which means good recovery. I look at different sleep patterns. I've learned a lot about my own sleep by just gauging what's going on every single day. So for example, I know if I have a glass of wine after 8 o'clock, my sleep is not going to be that great. But if I have a glass of wine around 6, I can still sleep perfectly fine, right? And that's something I just had to discover randomly by just using this ring. And not because I tried different experiments necessarily, just by observation and just looking at it every single day. So I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I've talked a lot about it on the podcast before. I know there's other ones out there, like Whoop is another popular one, right? You can use the Apple Watch for a lot of different things as well. And this is the one that I personally use. I might be open to changing it and try something like the Whoop or something else. So if you have any experience with that, let me know. But I love the Oura Ring. I use it every day. And to me, it's kind of like a video game to allow me to get better at life. And so every day is kind of like a new reset of like, oh, this is what happened last night or yesterday. How can I improve upon this? Right. So I'm always like treating it as a video game and leveling up in a way, my own character.
Yeah, a lot of members of the dojo are Aura Ring fans as well. So it's always fun when people start sharing their stats and sharing what's working for them to improve their stats, or just giving advice. So it's kind of fun and useful to have a kind of shared device that people can all a shared language that people can use. So that's a great pick if you're wanting a tracker and maybe you don't want to deal with having a watch, or maybe you're somebody who wants the idea of a tracker but you also want to wear a non-digital watch. Then yeah, Aura Ring's a great solution. All right, so for my fourth pick is a course. So the course is called Keyboard Maestro Field Guide by David Sparks over at maxsparky.com. It's, I believe it's $29. Um, Keyboard Maestro is a tool that I have owned for a long time, and I kind of used it for little things here and there. But and even when David released the course, I bought it, but didn't really go through it for a while. But then maybe 6 months or so ago, I decided to really make time to do it. So I went through and watched one video a day. Sometimes I'd knock off a few if I had time, but they're short, nice short videos, and implemented it. And it is a really, really great deep dive into a really great product. So if you're not familiar with Keyboard Maestro, this one unfortunately is Mac only. So apologies to my fellow Windows users, but Keyboard Maestro is a automation tool on the Mac, which basically allows you to control everything on your Mac using all sorts of different triggers like keyboard shortcuts, when you plug in a device, when you hit a certain URL. Like, there's a ton of different things it can do. It's a little overwhelming to learn, but Keyboard Maestro Field Guide, I actually just referred to it today because I wanted to look up how to do something. So if you are interested in Mac automation, and especially if you've never really made the time to master Keyboard Maestro, it's definitely $29 well spent.
Keyboard Maestro is one of those tools that I think is the most underutilized tools and apps out there. And it's such a powerful tool if you know how to use it. And I know a lot of people felt that way, for example, about OmniFocus. They're going like, oh, I use the basics, I flag this or do this. And once they actually use some of the power user features, you go, whoa, I never thought this was possible, or this is amazing. And I feel the same way about Keyboard Maestro times 10, because it has 10 times more features. And as a result of that, probably like millions of different use cases of how you can use it. So one of my favorite ones, as an example, is anytime I plug in my podcast mic, it will then start certain apps like Audio Hijack, which is something we use for recording the audio separately, but then also quit certain apps so that it doesn't take up any bandwidth, right? Since we're streaming this too. So it quits like Dropbox as an example. So there's no syncing. But then as soon as I detach the podcast mic, then it detects that as well. And then it will basically do the reverse. So we'll restart Dropbox, right? And then quit Audio Hijack Pro and so on. And so it's one of those little things that, runs in the background now, and I've had it for years. But I still remember when I set it up, I went, whoa, this is amazing. What else can I do? And once you have one automation set up, you're just addicted to it, and you want to learn more and more. So I totally can see how once you learn one specific feature, that the rabbit hole just goes really deep.
Agreed. All right, let's have your final pick, Tan.
All right, my fifth and final pick here, and number 9, and that is the Theragun Pro. So if you've been watching any sort of like review website lately, a lot of them have talked about this type of tool where you can kind of like massage yourself in a way. So it's called a percussion therapy, or a percussion device. And you probably see them on Instagram ads or Facebook ads, or just as you're browsing websites, you see those ads popping up all over the place. And it's become kind of like a hot thing over the last 6 months. And I thought, man, who's going to pay for this, right? And then my 2 brothers, who are younger than me, much younger than me, they ended up buying one together. And I came to visit them. This is maybe half a year ago. And they said, oh, Tian, look at this. I bought this Theragun Pro. It's, $600. And they're like, still in college. And I go, how the hell do you have $600 to spend on this, first and foremost? And then second thing is, I know you guys work out a lot, but you guys are so young. You guys don't even need this stuff. And they're like, no, no, like we heard so much good stuff about it. And so when I came to visit them, they showed me how to use it. So I used it before we went working out together. And I was like, whoa, I am warmed up in like 3 minutes by using this little tool, which was kind of nice. And then also anytime I felt soreness or tightness anywhere, I would just use that little device on there. And it was just gone in like a few minutes. And I went, oh my gosh, like this would normally take a masseuse, a lot of pressure and little pain and suffering there to kind of get rid of that knot or that tightness. But with this percussion tool, the Theragun Pro, it was gone in just a few minutes. And so when I left, I said, okay, I need to have one of these at some point. And then I saw a really good deal online. I said, okay, I need to buy this. And so I've had it for a few weeks now. And since I work out 5, 6, 7 times a week now, especially during this quarantine, before the quarantine, I was working out maybe 4 or 5 times a week, but now it's like 6 or 7 times a week. I feel a lot more, stiffness, tightness. I'm pretty lazy when it comes to stretching after workouts because I just want to move on with my day. I usually stretch before I go to bed and in the morning. But using this now, anytime I have a break, I just like to use it and I feel if I have any tightness somewhere, I use it right away. And I usually now before I go to bed, I use it as well to loosen up and just to relax. And also I had shoulder surgery a few years ago where I have a lot of scar tissue left in my right shoulder. And so I used it in the first week every day, and my range of motion increased significantly. So I was a big believer after doing that, even more so. So increased range of motion, and it just feels so much more relaxed. And it's kind of an expensive tool, I will say that, $600. But there's a lighter version of it, which I think is like half the price. And then there's a lot of different alternatives, like the Hypervolt and a couple other ones that are a little bit more affordable. I personally never used those. I just went with the ones that my brothers bought, and that happened to be kind of like the gold standard. So the Theragun is kind of like considered the gold standard for a lot of people. But yeah, if you have a lot of stiffness or tightness, or you sit a lot and you work out a lot, this is a really helpful tool to have.
Is it painful to use? The reason I ask is when we were mentioning it the other day, one of the dojo members said that I think in her words, it was brutal. So is it painful, or is it one of those good pain situations?
I think more of it's more of a good pain. So you can set it a different setting, so you can have it really aggressive, right, and then really slow, and then also the top or the surface level thing you can actually swap out with different different variations and shapes. And so you can make it really strong or kind of like penetrating in a way, and other ones are a little bit more softer on you. But then again, I'm also someone who gets a deep tissue massage every 2 weeks, and I need someone who's really strong. So take it with a grain of salt. I think that's the best way to approach this. But like I said, if you're working out a lot and you're sitting a lot and you feel a lot of stiffness and soreness, this is one way to address that very quickly and easily.
All right. So my final pick is called the Raspberry Pi. So usually I have a policy of not buying things that I don't have a specific use for. Otherwise, they just sit around forever. And that's kind of what happened with this tool. This item is called the Raspberry Pi, and what it is a tiny little board, computer board, I should say, that has things like a network connector, there's a USB port, and even though it's this tiny little piece of circuitry, it is a functional computer. It actually runs as a computer. And I bought it to start playing with it, and it kind of sat around for a while. But then when the quarantine started, I started actually playing with it, and I've been really, really enjoying it. So I think if you just buy the board itself, it's like $35 or something like that. Or you can buy these kits that come with more things to add on to it, which is what I did. I bought something called the Canna Kit Starter Kit. So we have a link to that in the show notes. And I've been really enjoying it. So there's tons of projects you can do. Look online for Raspberry Pi projects, and there's a million of them. You can have it act as a blocker for your network. to block ads and threats. You can turn your garage door into a smart home device. You can turn your printer into a Wi-Fi printer if it's not already. If you have an older TV, you can turn it into a smart TV that works the way you want it to. Kids use it to learn coding. You can learn electronics with it. You can build things onto it. There's a million attachments. During the quarantine, one thing I did is I turned it into a retro gaming station. So there's a project called RetroPie that lets you turn it into an emulator. So my kids and I were playing Sega Genesis games, old school Nintendo games, Super Nintendo games. We were battling with Mike Tyson's Punch Out and Super Mario Kart and Sonic. So all those great games. And it's just one of those little devices that can do so much. So either buy the pieces to assemble yourself and get a kit, but if you want to play around with electronics, or maybe you have kids and are looking for some projects to do together that are electronics-y, STEM-y, the Raspberry Pi is a great place to start. So if you're listening to this and you know of awesome Raspberry Pi projects, definitely let us know.
That is so cool. I can see how kids would be dying over something like this. And also, if you're a little geeky, you want to kind of like get physical again with stuff. I can see this being really fun. Yeah. I wish I kind of had this a few years ago.
Yeah, in the dojo chat, Kim says that she gave the Raspberry Pi to her nephew when he was 9, and he absolutely loved it. And yeah, when I was 9, I definitely would have loved it as well.
So those are our 10 recommendations and some of our favorite purchases over the last year. Now, if any of these resonate with you, I would say just go ahead and purchase them, right? And if you have the budget for it, just go ahead right away and get that instant benefit from it. Or if the time is not right now, then add them to your wish list, whether it's a list somewhere in Evernote or OmniFocus or maybe somewhere on Amazon. Just add it to your wish list. And we have links to everything that we talked about today in the show notes. So if you need any reference there, just go to theproductivityshow.com/303.